Welcome back to the Nick Bartlett Show, everybody. If you don't know me by now, I'm a senior writer here at Super West Sports, as well as at OregonSportsNews.com. And this week, I'm going to be breaking down four big games out here in the Super West region. And this week, I got UCLA at Indiana, Illinois at Washington, BYU at Iowa State, and Houston at Arizona State. I always throw on two quick hitters as well. I don't give you a full game preview, but just to touch on a couple more matchups. And as always, please remember to like and subscribe because it's early in the morning, y'all. I thought about singing the Sublime song to open this, but copyright stuff, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So thank you guys for tuning in, and let's just get straight to it today. We got some games. I'd say maybe not quite as big a slate as last week, but a couple of really interesting games. And starting with kind of the interesting theme, we're going to get into UCLA at Indiana. Obviously, UCLA had that miserable start to the year, but they're doing things now. And if they upset Indiana, this team could, in theory, still win the Big Ten. Yeah, I know. I know. It kind of throws me off, too. So to get started with the notes, though, I thought about picking an upset in this matchup, but I'm not going to doubt Indiana again. I thought Oregon was going to wipe Indiana all the way to East Chicago. My mom's from East Chicago. That's where I'm going to get that reference there. But the key to this matchup for UCLA is protecting the ball. Nico, I still can't say his name. It's the one I can't get. Nico I had 3 turnovers against Maryland, which is going to spell doom against Indiana. He's just got to protect the ball better. The Bruins should also continue to be aggressive. Nico's proven he can win games, and really UCLA has nothing to lose in this matchup. I mean, they've already turned around their season. They've gotten their fan base involved again, and if they go to Bloomington and knock off the Hoosiers, that would be something truly special. So it'd definitely be something to watch this week. Indiana ranks 23rd in pass yards allowed per game. So obviously they're a really strong unit, but they're not perfect. They're not that top 5, top 10 unit. So maybe Nico can find some success, The Bruins also have a solid pass defense ranking 21st. So UCLA might be able to slow down Fernando Mendoza a little bit. LA will also, I went ahead on my notes there. Basically the Bruins need to find a way to stop Fernando Mendoza. Mendoza's become an absolute monster at IU. If you guys haven't been following him closely, at Cal he was doing really good things, but ever since he transferred to Indiana, it's just been a different story. He's been a really elite player. He's thrown for 1,755 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He also has a multitude of skill players at his disposal. It's Indiana; they got talent all over the field. Indiana's halfback duo of Kalon Black and Roman Hemby have combined for 871 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. And they also have 2 receivers who have just about 600 yards receiving. One's a little over, one's a little under. For the Bruins, they need to continue to be productive on the ground. When you're facing, I believe it's the 4th-ranked scoring defense in Indiana, you better do something to keep them honest. And another thing, too, with that is keeping the Hoosiers off the field. Again, we just read Mendoza's stat line, which is actually absolutely crazy. I don't even know if I put in his rushing stats. I think I left those out. He might be making an impact on the ground as well. But bottom line, to keep him off the field, you got to be able to run the ball at UCLA. If you can't run in Bloomington, it could be a really, really tough day. And I've been known to fake foreshadow, y'all. I've been known. But remember, my fearless predictions are going to be released later today, so I will give you my pick then for the win-loss. But I'll give you my over/under and picks for or against the spread right now. So looking at the line of this matchup, Indiana is favored by 25.5 points. By 25.5 points. I do not think Indiana will cover. 25.5 is a big cover. I think back to the WSU Mississippi Ole Miss game a couple weeks ago, and Ole Miss was favored by 30, and the Cougs only lost by 3. I'm not saying if the Bruins are going to win or lose at this point, but again, I don't think Indiana is going to cover a 25.5 point spread. The over/under for this game is 53.5. Going with the over again. Mendoza's been killing it. Indiana's 4 or 5 different skill players who can hurt you, and Nico's been doing some good things for UCLA. They can get their run game moving at all. There could be a decent amount of points in this contest. So again, I do not think Indiana will cover. 25.5 feels a little steep to me, and we're going over, and that number again is 53.5. The next contest we are going to get into today. Am I in a singing mood as I scroll through my notes? I don't really think so. It's a little earlier than I'm used to doing this. Sorry guys. As always, I throw in some extra stats. So some extra stats, and I'll be ready for this next time. Got y'all. So for UCLA, Nico has thrown for 1,355 yards, 10 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. He's also added 360 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground. The Bruins have 3 halfbacks who've rushed in between 221 and 232 yards apiece. So that's what I'm talking about. Someone's got to step up. It's been a different guy every week, and it's got to be someone against Indiana. It really does. Quasi Gilmer leads the Bruins in receptions and receiving yards with 30 and 369, and he also has 2 touchdown receptions. And John Vaughns leads the team with 66 tackles and is tied for the team lead with 3 TFLs as a linebacker. He also has a fumble recovery. And again, for this contest, I do not think Indiana will cover the big spread, and I picked the over. Moving on to the next game here, we have who is our next game? I think, actually, I didn't read them today. We're doing the Big Ten matchups and then the Big 12 matchups. So we got Illinois at Washington, and again, this is a big game for both teams. I think the loser of this game is pretty much eliminated from being considered kind of a real threat in the Big Ten. I don't know if either of these teams are considered a real threat either way, but a loss here kind of solidifies that notion. So looking at the actual notes here, let's not kind of prematurely start just talking again. So Washington's a tricky team to cover. Jed Fish hasn't won any big games as head coach of the Huskies. In my opinion, I just don't think he has that huge notable result yet. But they're also good enough that they should probably beat Illinois. The key for UW in this matchup is stopping Luke Altmaier. Altmaier's an extremely reliable quarterback, and that's always tough to play against, particularly at the college level. He understands the game. He's going to make all the right throws, and he's going to protect the ball. So if you're not doing that on the other side of the field, you could be in trouble. Altmaier ranks 9th in passing efficiency and 6th nationally in completion percentage. He's thrown for 1,821 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And the Illini feature the 38th. I was going a little fast there. The Illini feature the 38th ranked passing offense under Altmaier. They're also 37th nationally in points scored per game. So not like a top 20 offense, but really an effective unit. I always think his top 40 as being pretty legit at the college level. The Dogs really should be able to key in on him, though, because the U of I struggles to run the ball. Illinois ranks 111th nationally rushing yards per game. The Huskies rank 20th in rushing yards allowed. So you're thinking that the Dogs should be able to make Illinois one-dimensional. Again, the Illini really struggled to run the ball. And Washington did pretty good against Ohio State, stopping the run. Michigan kind of whipped their tails last week, but every once in a while that's bound to happen. I'm expecting UW to return to kind of their normal form this week. So again, I'm thinking Illinois is going to struggle to run the ball a bit. And DeMond Williams Jr., UW's quarterback, also needs a bounce back performance. He threw 3 interceptions, and Huskies lost last week against Michigan. The Illini ranked 95th in passing yards allowed, so he should be able to have a bounce back game. Williams is a good quarterback. He just doesn't have the little intricacies yet, is the only way I can describe it. He's going to be legit. He needs just a few more reps. If you ever played Madden as a kid, he needs that pocket presence drill where you throw tennis balls, they get faster, projectively faster. On all Madden, that was so hard. They'd be throwing tennis balls at you every direction. But yeah, anyways, Williams needs to make plays. He needs to bounce back. No other way to say it, really. UW's pass defense also struggles, which surprised me a little bit, ranking 89th nationally. U of I has a mediocre defense, and that just might be something to consider in this matchup. Looking at the spread and the over-under, Washington's favored by 3.5 at home. I'm thinking Washington will cover that, so you can use logic and figure out what that means. Looking at the over-under, the number is 54.5. I'm going with the over again. Again, Washington is good offense. Altmaier is maybe one of the most reliable quarterbacks in the Big Ten, so you're thinking there's some points scored in this contest. So again, Washington does cover the 3.5-point spread, and the over-under is 54.5, and I'll throw in some final stats for you here. So obviously, we're going to talk about DeMond Williams Jr., Jonah Coleman. No, we're not. We're going to start with the Illini. Just kidding. So Caden Fagan leads the team in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns with 338 and 5 touchdowns for the Illini. Hank Beatty leads the team in receptions and receiving yards with 39 and 617. He's also added 2 receiving touchdowns. Colin Dixon has 22 receptions, 357 receiving yards, and 3 touchdown receptions. And Gabe Jocos leads the team with 4.5 sacks and 5.5 TFLs at defensive end. He also has 23 tackles on the year. As we are talking about Washington 2 seconds ago with the foreshadowing, DeMond Williams Jr. is thrown for 1,837 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 4 receptions. He's also added 363 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground. Jonah Coleman leads Huskies in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns with 568 and 12. And Denzel Boston leads the team in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns receptions with 34, 515 and 6, and he's a big target out wide. He's a good player. Jacob Lane leads the team with 2.5 sacks and 6 TFLs as a linebacker. He also has 28 tackles on the year. And remember, I'm going to over in this contest, and I think the Huskies will cover the 3.5-point spread. Next matchup, we're going to hop over the Big 12 territory now into tornado territory. Now, Big 10's tornado territory, too. My family is, again, from the Midwest. I remember those sirens as a kid. That's pretty scary. When you're from Seattle, you're not used to that. So those tornado sirens are scary. But anyway, hopping over the Big 12 territory, BYU at Iowa State. Really, again, just another interesting matchup. It's the only way to describe it this week. They're not like huge games, but they're vastly interesting games. Vastly is not the right word there, but they're interesting. I'm not going to say that again. This has the potential to be a huge trap game for BYU. Iowa State's better than their Big 12 record indicates. And in theory, they're still fighting for a return to the conference championship. That obviously kind of underperforming at this point by their standards, but they're still in the mix. The key for the Cyclones is finding a way to chip through the Cougars' offensive line. BYU ranks second in the Big 12 in rushing yards per game, and they've only allowed 6 sacks all season. A player like defensive end Ikana Izogu might need to have a player of the week type of performance. Izogu has 3 sacks on the year. Another way to compete against the Cougs is to score early points. And this is the thing with BYU. They're undefeated. They're a really good team. And they surprised me knocking off Utah a week ago with that nice little fourth quarter rally. But they're not explosive. They're not a team that's going to, I hate to say this being from Seattle. But if you're an NBA fan, they're not a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder who's just going to turn a 0 point, like a 1 or 2 point lead into a 20-point lead before you freaking move, as you'll see with the Thunder. BYU isn't that team. They're going to slowly and methodically whip your butt. So if you can jump out to an early lead, 10-14, it's going to keep you in the game. Granted, you might not win in the end, but if you just hang around, they're not going to, ring off 35 straight points. They're not built like that. So again, jumping out to a big lead is really, really important against BYU. More important than it is against most top-tier teams. As we're talking about here, BYU only allows 15.6 points per game, 14th nationally. So again, if they get an early rhythm, you could be in trouble. The Cougars' pass defense ranks 21st, while the rush defense is 40th in yards allowed per game. ISU ranks 59th in rushing yards per game, but they got to do a bit more in this matchup to keep BYU off balance, as we're talking about. I like their halfback duo of Abu Sama and Carson Hansen. Sama is a really talented player. The duo have combined for 829 yards and 6 touchdowns. And Rocco Beck is a reliable veteran quarterback. And this is what I was kind of hinting at. If BYU can keep him, the Cyclones can keep him in the game, Rocco Beck has a crazy record in fourth quarter comebacks and fourth quarter type situations. I had this stat a couple of weeks ago, but bottom line is if the game's close, he's a closer. He's a killer. Derek Jeter, Roger Clemens. I'm not a Yankees fan, but I guess we're in a Yankees mood today. But bottom line, Rocco Beck is a closer. He's a killer. So don't let it be close, BYU. Warning. But again, he's also just the right guy to kind of steady the nerves of the program when they need to win. 3 losses in the Big 12 would really hurt Iowa State. What their goals are for this year. It hurt Iowa State pretty bad. So looking at the over-under and the spread, this Iowa State's actually favored in this contest, surprising me a little bit. I do think Iowa State will cover, favored by 2.5 points. I do think Iowa State will cover. For the over-under at 49.5, I'm going with the under. I actually don't think Iowa State's going to jump out to that big lead, but I do think their defense is going to play tough. I think BYU is going to be a little worn down from the Holy War. A huge win. I mean, that's the biggest game in the state of Utah every year. So I think just psychologically, mentally, and physically, they're going to be worn down a little bit. And I think the Cyclones might be able to hinder their offense. So again, picking the under there, 49.5, and I do think Iowa State will cover the 2.5 point spread. Looking at the extra notes here, who are we starting with? I'm not going to guess this time. Starting with BYU, Bear Bachmeier is thrown for 1,386 yards, 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's also had 359 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground. Bear Bachmeier isn't like your traditional, I'm going to scramble wild out of the pocket type of quarterback. Again, he's kind of more of just almost like a QB draw, like a halfback draw type quarterback. They'll run him up the middle a whole bunch. It's a unique watch. LJ Martin is the team leader rushing yards with 447 yards. He's also added 4 touchdowns. Chase Roberts leads the team in both receiving yards and touchdowns with 463 and 4. He's an underrated player. I love watching Chase Roberts. And, Fatatua Sataloe leads the team in tackles and forced fumbles with 43 and 2 at safety. Sorry if I mispronounced it, but it did roll off the tongue the way I said it. But in all seriousness, sorry if I mispronounced it. And Sataloa really is a long stat line here. He also has 5.5 TFLs and 1 interception. So let me reread that whole thing. Leads the team in tackles and forced fumbles with 43 tackles and 2 forced fumbles at safety. He also has 5.5 TFLs and 1 interception. So Fatatue is making a heck of an impact. Moving on to Iowa State here, Rocco Beck is known for 1,622 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. He's also added 7 touchdowns on the ground. Abu Sama leads the team with 481 rushing yards. He's also added 4 rushing touchdowns. And Brett Eskildon leads the team with 334 receiving yards, and he's averaging a really impressive 16.7 yards per reception. He also has 2 receiving touchdowns. Marcus Neal leads the team in tackles and TFLs with 45 and 6 at defensive back. He also has 3 pass deflections. And again, remember for this contest, I'm picking Iowa State to cover the 2.5-point spread, and I went with the under. Again, I think Iowa State's defense is going to be able to take advantage of BYU's probably a little bit worn out from their impressive Holy War victory. And I think Iowa State's going to Iowa State's not going to score a whole bunch against BYU, but you get where I'm going with this. Pick the under. Final game, sticking with the Big 12 before we hit the quick hitters. So the final full breakdown here. Houston at ASU, Arizona State, ASU. Is that OSU's fight song? Either way, I like it. Looking at the actual notes here, there's one. Yeah, we could skip all the notes, really. Obviously, I got a few more than this, but there's one thing to consider for this matchup. And basically, the game took a massive shift due to the injury of Jordan Tyson. Tyson might be the best receiver in the Super West region, and his absence should allow Houston to simplify their defensive game plan. And it's hard to put that in writing, especially when you're doing a fearless prediction, again, coming out later today. But that felt shameless, but kind of natural at this point to say that. But the thing is, you can't put all this in writing. What I mean by they're able to simplify their game plan is when Tyson's on the field, his presence is going to be felt. Whether he's involved in the play or not, everyone's going to be watching him at all times. He's going to require multiple bodies around him, a lot of attention. And without him on the field, it just makes everything easier for Houston. They can stack the box a little bit more. Their number one corner can now guard ASU's second receiver, and it just makes everything for the Cougars. Everything easier for the Cougars, who already have a really good defense. So again, the Tyson injury it hurts. It hurts bad, and I think Houston again is going to be able to capitalize. The Cougars are 27th in points allowed per game. So again, a really solid defensive unit. For ASU's counterpunch, they'll need to get a wide variety of players involved in offense. Shimon Meteor could prove one of those guys. Meteor has 226 receiving yards at tight end this year. I'm trying to sugarcoat it. Jordan Tyson does everything for them on offense, and going through their receiving yards when their second leading receiver is a tight end with 226, it's going to be really tough to replace Tyson. I cannot say that enough. They'll also need Sam Levitt and Raleek Brown to overperform. Levitt, obviously, he is a solid quarterback. And Raleek Brown might be one of the more overlooked running backs nationally. I don't think he's like a top guy, but he's a really talented player who should get a bit more attention. He can take over a game if you're not kind of doing what you need to do and sticking in the seams and staying in your assignments. Raleek Brown's going to hurt you because if you overcommit on him, he's going to burn you. So something to consider there. Flipping the page, UH has taken a huge leap forward in offense this year due to the emergence of Connor Wegman. Wegman's been fun to watch. He's a good player. He's young, though. He is young. Wegman will need to play well because Dean Connors, their halfback, might struggle. Arizona State's stingy against the run, ranking 27th in yards allowed per contest. They rank 59th in pass yards allowed per game, so you're thinking Wegman might be able to kind of take advantage of that a little bit. But again, I believe he's just a freshman, so a few mistakes could be made. Rounding out the Cougars trio is Amari Thomas at wideout. Thomas has 510 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns this season. This is a game where it sounds weird, where if Amari Thomas can make a few big plays, maybe make a little bit more bigger impact than usual. Again, 510 yards receiving on the year. He's a heck of a player. But if you could just make 1 or 2 big plays with the absence of Tyson, it might be too much for ASU to overcome. So I think if Thomas is a good ball game, it could really benefit UH. Looking at the over, so you got anything else on this one? Nah, I think that's pretty much it for the notes. I'll obviously give you the extra, but I think, again, just really knowing the Tyson injury is key for this one. Looking at the spread, ASU is favored by 7.5. That really surprised me, actually, with Tyson's injury. I do think ASU will cover the spread. You heard me right. I tricked you with all those Tyson things. I do think ASU will cover the spread, though. I don't know why. I just got a feeling their defense is going to boss up. Just a feeling. Can't really put this one on stats. Over under 46.5. Under, again, with Tyson out, if I'm picking ASU to cover the spread, then their defense kind of boss up. So I got to go with the under 46.5. Houston isn't historically known for having great offense. Again, they've improved a lot this year with Wegman, but last year they were one of the worst offenses in the nation. So maybe some of that bleeds over this week. The final full notes before we get over to the quick hitters here. For the quick hitters, I don't kind of give you the extra stuff. It's real fast, in, out, boom, bop, bang. For Houston, Connor Wegman is throwing for 1,380 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He's also added 243 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground. Dean Connors leads the team in rushing with 538 yards. He's also added a rushing touchdown. He's tough. I don't know why I think ASU is going to be able to contain him, but Connors is a really high IQ running back. He's fun to watch. Again, I'd say Raleek Brown's more explosive. Dean Connors is more crafty. Tanner Koziel leads the team in receptions with 36 at tight end. He has 350 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns as well. And Jalen Garner leads the team with 2 forced fumbles and is tied for the team lead with 48 tackles as a linebacker. He also has 2 sacks and 2.5 TFLs. There's a nice little stat line there as well. For ASU, Sam Levitt has done for 1,358 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. He's also added 278 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. Raleek Brown leads the team in rushing with 642 yards on a nice 5.8 yards per carry. So again, Raleek Brown is probably a little bit overlooked nationally and in the Big 12 as well. He's also added 3 rushing touchdowns. Sticking on the Raleek Brown, double stat. Is that like double jeopardy? He's second on the team in receptions, trailing only Jordan Tyson. He has 25 catches for 139 yards. Again, I told you it's really bare without Tyson. Your receptions leader behind him is your halfback, and the yardage leader is the tight end. And it's neither of them have necessary blistering stats. So good luck. Keyshawn Elliott leads the team in tackles with 54 at linebacker. He's also tied for the team lead in sacks and TFLs with 4 and 7.5. And I threw an extra stat because I felt like we'd double down with Raleek Brown. But it's a real kind of quick one. Martell Hughes leads the team with 2 interceptions at linebacker. For the quick hitters, and then I guess one quick reminder before we get to the quick hitters. For this one, I picked ASU to cover, and I picked the under. I'm kind of looking at this matchup, though. I want to make sure with the Tyson thing I didn't leave anything out. I think that's just it. Again, just kind of double down. Just really be aware of that Tyson injury. I think that's the biggest thing to know for this matchup. Again, and maybe a player like Raleek Brown for Arizona State bosses up, and you're going to need a big game from their defense and Sam Levitt as well. Final quick hitters here. Let's get break out the drums, break out the beats, because these are going to be fired off rapid pace. Sound kind of cool. San Diego State at Fresno State. I'm digging this one. I wish I'd give it more time, but objectively, it's not one of the big 4. This is a rivalry known as the Old Oil Can. And these schools are entirely different, literally like the most different schools, besides from them being in the state of California. San Diego and Fresno State, or San Diego and Fresno are entirely different cities, and their football programs reflect that. Add the states onto it. That's how you're supposed to say that. Looking at the contest, though, San Diego State is actually favored by 2.5 points. Kind of surprised me a little bit. Obviously, they've had a really good year with Sean Lewis, with the exception of their loss to WSU. The Aztecs have really balled out. They have one of the best players in the country, defensive end, and Trey White, if you haven't heard of him. If you're kind of casual and you just like watching good players, just tune into Trey White. He's a freak of nature at defensive end for SDSU. But for the spread, again, San Diego State is favored by 2.5 points. I do not think they're going to cover this. I think E.J. Warner is a really good quarterback for Fresno State. He's the son of Kurt Warner. He's had some interception troubles this year, but besides for that, he can move the ball up and down the field. And I think against a team like the Aztecs, that's actually maybe more important than throwing a couple turnovers. I'm kind of just controlling time possession because Sean Lewis with his Aztec fast offense, they can score, but sometimes it might be a little bit too quick. So as long as E.J. Warner's picking up some first downs, getting a 5-minute drive here, 6-minute drive here, maybe a punt, maybe a field goal, maybe a touchdown, maybe an interception, just steadily moving the ball, I think it could really benefit the Bulldogs. This is a quick hitter, so that's enough. The nerd was coming out. Let's move on. But bottom line, I do not think that San Diego State will cover the 2.5 point spread. And for the over/under at 47.5, I'm going with the over. I think SDSU's offense is decent enough to put points, and I think E.J. Warner is going to kind of have a really big game. Final matchup of the week, a rivalry. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what that was, but I tried. Colorado at Utah, final game. make this real simple. Utah's favored by 13.5 points. Objectively speaking, they're the better team. And I just think they're going to be pissed off from losing the Holy War, and Kyle Whittingham's not trying to lose to a rival twice in a row, particularly at home against Deion Sanders. I don't think Kyle Whittingham's trying to lose that game. For the Buffs, Caden Salter's really just got to play. At some point, Caden Salter's just got to take over a game. You can really say the same thing for the Utes. Devon Dampier's got to take over a game. I think the one line I'll steal from my writing is both squads have a group of 5 transfer quarterbacks who've done enough but haven't done enough. It's the only way I can describe it. They're just not doing enough. I mean, they're really not. Utah has 2 losses in the Big 12, and Colorado has 3, and that's both teams expected better, objectively speaking. Again, Utah's favored by 13.5 points. I do think Utah will cover. And the over-under is set at 48.5, and I'm going with the under. I'm going with the over. Sorry, my math was off there. Yeah, that's something seemed off. Going with the over for this one. So again, I do think Utah will cover and pick the over. So yeah, guys, that is it for this week. Thank you guys for tuning as always. I really do appreciate your support. You guys have no idea. Sometimes I have to fight through to make this show. We had a band going on at the local community center last night. So that's why, again, the early morning Bartlett version here. So maybe too hyped up on coffee, but hey, things happen. Seriously, guys, thank you guys for tuning in, though. I do appreciate it. Final quick recap of my picks. UCLA won't cover. Iowa State will cover. Washington will cover. And ASU will cover again. UCLA won't cover. Iowa State will cover. Washington will cover. And ASU will cover. Over-unders, UCLA, Indiana over. Washington, Illinois over. Iowa State, BYU under. And Colorado, Utah under. Again, UCLA, Indiana over. Washington, Illinois over. Iowa State, BYU under. And Colorado, Utah under. Usually I have some final, fancy kind of deuces, something, blah, blah, blah. Just want to say, enjoy the games. We're getting to the end of the college football season, and this is when it matters. I know these might not be the biggest matchups nationally, but every one of these games has huge importance. Again, that ASU matchup is essentially a loser-out game. You could say the same thing for the Washington game. You could say the same for Iowa State and the BYU game. So some really meaningful games, even though it may not be number 1 versus number 2. I'm Nick Bartlett. Thank you guys for tuning in again, and I will see you all later.